In the dusty outskirts of a sprawling African city where the red earth met the endless sky, lived a girl named Efia. Known to her peers as Slow Girl, she moved through life at a pace that frustrated everyone around her. Efia was not only slow in her actions but also in her speech, often taking long pauses before responding, her words carefully chosen and her voice a mere whisper against the cacophony of village life. Efia lived with her grandmother, Mama Abena, in a modest home made of sun-baked bricks and a roof of corrugated iron that sang under the weight of the rainy season's torrents. Mama Abena was a seamstress, her fingers deft and quick, a stark contrast to Efia's languid ways. The old woman often lamented, "Efia, why can't you move faster? Time won't wait for you, my child." At school, Efia's slowness made her an easy target. The other children teased her relentlessly, their words sharp as thorns. "Useless! That's what you are," they would shout as she tried to keep up during games or struggled to finish her schoolwork on time. Her teachers, though not unkind, were impatient, mistaking her slow nature for a lack of understanding or interest. But Efia had a secret. She possessed an extraordinary gift that no one knew about. In her slow, deliberate way, Efia had an uncanny ability to observe details that others overlooked. Her world was rich with textures, colors, and sounds that others simply took for granted. She noticed the subtle changes in the wind's direction, the variations in the earth's scent, and the hidden patterns in the wildflowers that danced along the roadside. One late afternoon, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the village, a problem arose that would soon change how everyone saw Efia. A young boy, Kofi, went missing. He had ventured out to the fields beyond the village to herd the goats, but hadn't returned. As night approached, panic set in. Kofi's mother was frantic, her cries piercing the settling dusk. The villagers gathered, torches in hand, ready to search through the night. Efia stood at the edge of the crowd, her eyes scanning the ground, her mind piecing together the little details she had seen throughout the day. She remembered the unusual tracks by the creek, the disturbed leaves, and the faint sound of laughter carried by the wind towards the old baobab tree, a place most children were told to avoid due to superstitions. Mustering the courage that her grandmother's stories had woven into her heart, Efia stepped forward. Her voice, usually so soft and easy to ignore, now carried a quiet certainty. "I know where Kofi might be," she declared. The villagers paused, their murmurs fading into the night air. Even in the flickering torchlight, Efia's resolve was palpable. With hesitant steps, the villagers followed Efia as she led them towards the baobab tree. Each step was deliberate, her eyes fixed on the barely visible signs that whispered a story only she could read. As they approached, a small figure emerged from the shadows of the tree, crying and scared but unharmed. It was Kofi, clutching a toy he had chased into the dark. The villagers were stunned. Mama Abena, who had followed behind, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks, reached out to embrace Efia. The same people who had labeled Efia as useless now looked at her with newfound respect. In that moment, Efia had not only found Kofi, but had also begun to change the narrative of her life in the village. That night, as the villagers celebrated Kofi's safe return, the wind seemed to carry a new message, one that swirled around Efia like a gentle embrace. Slow but sure, thoughtful and observant, she was far from useless. And so, the story of Efia, once called Slow Girl, took a new turn, promising further tales of unexpected heroism that even she could not yet imagine. As dawn broke over the village, the first gentle rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, casting a golden glow on the thatched roofs. Efia, who had just begun to discover her own value to the community, woke to the soft sounds of Mama Abena humming in the kitchen. The air was filled with the aroma of frying plantains and the earthy scent of brewed tea. Today, Efia felt different. The previous night's events had woven a subtle strength into her spirit. In the center of the village, word of Efia's deed had spread like wildfire. The marketplace buzzed with more than just the usual barter and trade. Villagers whispered in awe and admiration about the girl who had led the search for Kofi with nothing but her keen senses and quiet determination. Efia, the observant one, they now called her, a title that carried respect rather than ridicule. Her slow pace, once a source of frustration, was seen in a new light, a thoughtful composure that seemed to harmonize perfectly with the rhythms of nature around her. That morning, as Efia walked to the stream to fetch water, the path felt alive with new possibilities. Children who had once mocked her now greeted her with curious glances and shy smiles. Even the old baobab tree, under whose ancient branches Kofi had been found, seemed to nod in approval as she passed by. As she filled her clay pot, Efia noticed the reflection of the sky in the water, a mirror of endless blues and fleeting clouds. It reminded her that the world was much larger than her village, and her thoughts drifted to what other mysteries lay beyond the familiar paths and well-trodden roads. Later, at the stream, an unexpected visitor approached her. It was Nana Ya, the village storyteller, an elderly woman whose eyes sparkled with unspoken lore. Nana Ya had a way of weaving tales that made the old myths breathe with life, and today she seemed particularly intent on speaking with Efia. "Nana Ya," Efia greeted her, her voice still soft but steady. "My child, the spirits of our ancestors are murmuring, and in their breath I hear your name." Nana Ya began, her tone imbued with a gravity that commanded attention. "Your actions last night have shown that you possess a rare gift, not just of observation, but of listening to the silent language of the natural world." Efia listened intently, her hands clasped around the cool surface of the water pot. "I want to teach you the ways of the storytellers," Nana Ya continued, "to see not only with your eyes but with your heart, to tell stories that can heal, that can teach, and that can reveal the truths hidden in plain sight." Efia felt a surge of excitement, tempered by the weight of the responsibility such a role would entail. To be a storyteller was to be a keeper of the village's heart, a role she never imagined could be hers. "I am ready to learn, Nana Ya," Efia replied, her decision firm like the ancient rocks that lined the riverbed. As the two walked back to the village, Nana Ya spoke of the symbols hidden in the landscape, of the spirits that dwelled in the wind and the trees, and of the ancestors who watched over them. Efia absorbed every word, every pause, every inflection. Her mind raced with ideas and images, a tapestry of stories unfurling before her. The sun was high in the sky when they returned, and the village seemed to pulse with a new rhythm, as if the very ground beneath their feet recognized the birth of a new storyteller. With each step, Efia felt her path merging with the age-old trails of those who had walked before her, ready to carve her own route through the rich tapestry of village life. As the shadows lengthened and the orange hue of twilight bathed the village, an air of expectancy hung like a thick blanket over the community. The dry season was nearing its peak, and with it came the time for the Great Harvest Festival, a celebration of thankfulness and communal spirit that brought together the surrounding villages. Under the guidance of Nana Ya, Efia's days were filled with learning the art of storytelling. Her mentor taught her how to harness the power of her observations, weaving them into narratives that captured the essence of the village life and the timeless dance of nature. Each story was a thread in the vibrant fabric of their culture, preserved and passed down through generations. As the festival approached, Efia was entrusted with a special role. She was to tell a story at the gathering, a story that would not only mark her debut as a storyteller, but also serve as a bridge connecting her newfound respect within the community to her past trials. The theme of her tale was chosen, the dance of the wind and the earth, a story that spoke of harmony and conflict, of listening deeply and responding with wisdom. Preparations for the festival were elaborate. The village square was cleared and swept, the drummers practiced their rhythms late into the night, and women prepared copious amounts of food. The air was rich with the smell of cooking meats, spiced and roasted over open fires, mixed with the sweet fragrance of ripening fruit. On the eve of the festival, Efia sat outside her hut, under the vast African sky studded with stars, rehearsing her story. The words flowed like a river, sometimes meandering, sometimes rushing with intensity. Her grandmother watched from the doorway, pride evident in her eyes. "Mama Abena," Efia called softly, her voice a blend of nervousness and excitement. "Do you think they will understand? Will they see the winds of change through my story?" Mama Abena walked over and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Efia, you speak the language of the earth and sky. Let your heart lead your words, and they will listen," she advised, her voice imbued with the wisdom of the old. The festival day dawned clear and bright. Drums beat a pulsating rhythm that seemed to match the heartbeat of the village. People from all around gathered, their colorful clothing a mosaic against the backdrop of dusty paths and green foliage. The air buzzed with greetings, laughter, and the anticipation of a day filled with joy and communal bonding. When it was time for Ifia to take her place in the center of the gathering, her heart thudded in her chest. She looked out at the sea of faces, feeling the weight of their expectations and her own hopes. As she began her story, her initial tremor gave way to a flowing confidence. Her voice carried over the crowd, clear and resonant. Her story spoke of the wind, a playful and sometimes fierce spirit that danced across the land, whispering secrets to those who would listen. She told of the earth, steady and nurturing, holding the history of their people in its rich soil. Through her tale, the wind and the earth spoke, argued, and ultimately found a way to coexist, their dance a metaphor for the village itself. As Ifia's story unfolded, the villagers were drawn into the narrative, their reactions shifting with the rhythm of her words. Laughter erupted at the antics of the wind, and nods of understanding greeted the wisdom of the earth. By the time Ifia's narrative reached its crescendo, the audience was enraptured, transported to a place where the very essence of life was distilled into her words. When she concluded, the silence that followed was profound, a collective breath held in awe. Then, as if the dam had burst, applause broke out, loud and exuberant, a cacophony of appreciation that echoed under the starlit sky. As the festival continued around her, Ifia felt a subtle shift within herself and in the eyes of those who now looked upon her not as the slow girl of before, but as Ifia, the storyteller, the voice of the wind and the earth. She had woven her own story into the fabric of the village, a story of transformation and acceptance whispered on the wind for generations to come. The days that followed the festival were alive with a renewed spirit throughout the village. Ifia, now recognized as a storyteller, found herself at the center of attention, a role she accepted with humility and a deep sense of purpose. The elders, who once dismissed her slow nature, sought her company, eager to share their own stories and insights, hoping to impart wisdom that she could weave into new tales. The dry season was waning, giving way to the first signs of the rains that would soon nourish the parched earth. The village prepared for this shift, reinforcing their homes against the impending storms and planting the seeds that would flourish into crops. In this cycle of preparation, Ifia found a rhythm that echoed her own growth. One afternoon, under the expansive shade of the baobab tree, the village's oldest natural monument, Ifia convened a gathering of children. They sat circled around her, their eyes wide with curiosity and delight, as she prepared to share a story, not of fantastical spirits or ancient warriors, but of the very landscape that surrounded them. Long ago, Ifia began, her voice weaving through the leaves of the baobab. The earth under our feet was not as you see it today. It was restless, always shifting and changing. The mountains were like great giants, wandering wherever they wished, and the rivers flowed not with water, but with the bright fire of the stars. The children gasped, their imaginations ignited by the vivid imagery. Ifia smiled, encouraging their wonder, then continued. One day, a great bird flew from the heavens and spoke to the mountains and the rivers. It sang a song so beautiful that the giants and the fiery streams could do nothing but listen. As she spoke, her hands mimicked the flight of the great bird, her fingers fluttering like wings against the backdrop of the sky. The song, my little ones, was about stillness and purpose. It was about finding one's place in the world and filling it with peace. The mountains, so moved by the bird's song, decided to stop their wandering and grow roots deep into the earth, becoming the still guardians we see today. The rivers, enchanted by the melody, calmed their fiery flow and began to nurture the land with water, sweet and clear as the morning light. Ifia paused, letting the story settle over the children like a gentle breeze. And so, she concluded, every part of our world found its place, each element contributing to the balance that sustains us now. The children, enraptured by the tale, began to look at their surroundings with new eyes, seeing not just the land but the stories it held. They asked questions, pointed at the hills in the distance, and wondered aloud about the songs they might sing. As the session under the baobab tree drew to a close, the children dispersed, their minds alive with thoughts of mountains and rivers, their steps light with the magic of the story they had just heard. Ifia remained seated, her gaze lingering on the ancient tree that had sheltered their gathering. The elders of the village, having listened from a respectful distance, approached her. One of them, an old man with a voice like gravel, spoke. "Ifia, your stories do more than entertain. They teach, they remind us, they bind us to this land and to each other." Ifia nodded, feeling the truth of his words deep in her bones. Her stories were more than just words. They were the threads that connected the past with the present, the earth with the sky, the individual with the community. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the village, Ifia felt the weight and the joy of her role as a storyteller. As night embraced the village, the air filled with the scent of coming rain, promising renewal and growth. Ifia walked home, her path illuminated by the first stars of the evening, her heart full of stories yet to be told, each one a seed waiting to be planted in the fertile ground of her listeners' hearts. In the village, the season of rains had begun to weave its wet tapestry across the land. The skies opened frequently, releasing deluges that drummed on the rooftops and turned the red earth into slippery paths. This was a time of growth and vitality, where the greenery burgeoned, embracing the village in a lush embrace. Ifia, in her newfound role as storyteller, found that the rain brought not only water, but a flow of stories from the elders, eager to be passed down through her voice. One rainy evening, as the villagers gathered in the communal hut, a large round structure with walls plastered in mud and a roof thatch that sighed under the weight of the rain, Ifia prepared to share a tale that had been given to her by the oldest of the village elders, a story not often told, reserved for moments when the past needed to speak directly to the present. The fire in the center of the hut crackled and spat, casting a warm glow that flickered over the faces of the assembled villagers, young and old. Ifia stood by the fire, the flames illuminating her features, casting her in the role of the conduit through which the ancients would speak. "This is the tale of Amma," Ifia began, her voice rising and falling with the rhythm of the rain. "Amma, who lived when the world was young and the spirits of the land walked openly with our ancestors." The listeners leaned in, the fire's warmth a stark contrast to the cool dampness that seeped in from outside. Amma was known throughout the lands for her wisdom, but she was also marked by a great sorrow, for she had lost her family to a wandering sickness that left her heart as barren as the dry season's end. Amma's grief was so profound that the earth itself felt her sorrow. The crops failed to grow, the rivers ran slow, and the animals of the forest moved silently, as if in mourning. The balance of the world was disturbed, and something needed to be done. Ifia's hands gestured to the skies, then to the earth, as she wove the narrative threads. So the spirits came to Amma in a dream. They told her to weave her sorrow into a basket, thread by thread, tear by tear, and when the basket was complete, to take it to the mountain where the sky touches the earth. The fire popped, a log collapsing under the heat, and the children jumped, their eyes wide, caught in the spell of the tale. Amma worked for many moons, weaving her basket, pouring her grief into each strand. When it was done, she journeyed to the mountain, the basket heavy with the weight of her heartache. There at the peak, she found a pool clear and deep, fed by the tears of the sky. Ifia paused, letting the image settle in the minds of her audience before continuing. Amma placed the basket in the pool, and as the water touched it, the grief began to dissolve, carried away by the waters that flowed down to nourish the land. As her sorrow ebbed, the balance was restored. Crops grew once more, rivers surged with vigor, and the animals of the forest rejoiced. As Amma descended the mountain, her heart lighter than it had been in years, the spirits spoke once more. They promised that whenever her descendants faced sorrow, they could come to this mountain, weave their grief into a basket, and the earth would help bear their burdens. The story ended as the rain eased outside, a perfect counterpoint to the tale of renewal and rebirth. The villagers sat in silence, absorbing the layers of meaning in Ifia's story, each person reflecting on their own sorrows and the healing offered by the earth. As the embers of the fire glowed softer and the night deepened, the villagers dispersed, each carrying a piece of the story within them, a shared heritage of strength and resilience, whispered by the ancestors through Ifia's voice, echoing in the rhythm of the rain. The village awoke to a morning draped in mist, the aftermath of the night's heavy rains creating veils of white that danced between the huts and trees. With the land lush and the air filled with the fresh scent of wet earth, the community bustled with activity, their spirits lifted by the promise of a bountiful season. Amidst this renewal, Ifia, now revered as a voice of the past and present, planned to use this day to gather the children for a new story, one that spoke of the wind's playful and mysterious nature. Gathering the village children under the now sunlit baobab tree, where the ground was dappled with light and shadow, Ifia shared her intention to tell them about the wind, not as a mere weather element, but as a character in the saga of their land. Long before the paths were laid, Ifia started, her voice soft yet clear enough to reach the ears of her young audience. The wind was known to be a keeper of secrets. It was believed that the wind carried the wisdom of the ancients, whispering to those who would listen. The children, seated on the ground, their eyes alight with curiosity, watched Ifia as she moved gracefully, her gestures mimicking the flow of air. In the times of old, there was a young boy named Kwame. He was known for his curiosity and courage, traits that led him to explore beyond the familiar. Kwame loved to climb the tallest trees, run across the widest fields, and most of all, he loved to listen to the stories told by the wind as it rustled through the leaves or howled around the corners of his hut at night. One day, as Ifia narrated, Kwame caught a peculiar sound on the breeze, a soft humming, unlike anything he had heard before. Driven by his boundless curiosity, Kwame followed the sound, which led him to the very edge of the village, near the cliffs that overlooked the vast ocean. Here, Ifia's voice dipped as if carrying a secret. The wind song grew louder, more distinct. It was a melody of ancient times, telling of hidden places beneath the earth, of caves filled with crystals that glowed with the light of the moon. The children leaned in, their imaginations ignited by visions of glowing crystals and secret caves. Ifia continued. Kwame, guided by the wind song, found the cave. Inside, the crystals shone so brightly that it turned night into day. He realized that these were not just any crystals. They were the tears of the moon, shed during times of sorrow, and they held the power to heal. Kwame gathered a few of these moon tears and brought them back to his village. The elders, wise and knowing, used the crystals to heal ailments, mend broken spirits, and guide their people through hard times. Ifia paused, letting the weight of the tale sink into the young minds before her. And so, Kwame learned that listening to the wind's whispers could lead to great discoveries and healing. He became a guardian of the secrets, a bridge between the ancient wisdom carried by the wind and his people. As the story ended, the children burst into chatter, excited by Kwame's adventures and enchanted by the mystical properties of the moon tears. They asked questions, their voices a pleasant cacophony under the baobab tree, eager to learn more about the wind and its secrets. Ifia answered each question with patience and grace, guiding the children's curiosity, fostering in them a love for the tales and teachings of their ancestors. As the session under the baobab tree drew to a close, the children dispersed, their minds alive with stories, their hearts light with the joy of discovery. The village, now basking in the warmth of the sun, continued its daily rhythm, the echoes of Ifia's storytelling blending with the natural harmony of the land, as the whispers of the wind moved softly, carrying new tales and ancient songs across the fields. The sun, rising to its midday throne, draped the village in a blanket of warmth. Under the broad leaves of the mango tree in the village square, the elders gathered, seeking solace from the heat in the cool shade offered by its ancient boughs. It was under this very tree that Ifia chose to hold a gathering, not just for children, but for all who wished to hear a tale of the land's deeper truths. As the villagers settled themselves on woven mats, Ifia prepared to share a story that had been passed down through whispered lines of ancestors, each adding their own thread to its narrative fabric. Today's tale was about the mango tree itself, a symbol of life and sustenance, but also a keeper of histories. In times long folded into the memory of the earth, Ifia began, her voice a soothing balm against the rustle of the mango leaves. This tree was planted by a woman named Yaa Asantewaa, a healer known for her wisdom and courage. It is said that she planted this tree on the day her first son was born, as a promise of shelter and food for her family and her village. The elders nodded, their faces etched with lines of many seasons, each crease a testament to stories lived and shared. Ifia continued, Yaa Asantewaa used to say that the tree would bear witness to the village's history, just as she would bear witness to the growth of her children. One season, when the rains failed to come and the crops began to wither, the village was faced with great hardship. Hunger whispered through the streets, a shadow stretching over every home. But the mango tree, deeply rooted and nurtured by Yaa Asantewaa's steady care, began to bear an abundance of fruit, more than it ever had. The villagers were astonished. They gathered under its branches, filling baskets with the sweet, juicy mangoes. It was this tree that sustained them through the drought, its bounty a testament to Ya Asantewa's foresight and love. Ifia paused, her eyes sweeping over her audience, connecting with them through the power of her story. But Ya Asantewa knew that the tree offered more than fruit. It offered lessons. She taught her children and her children's children that, like the tree, they must grow deep roots into their culture and their land, so no adversity could topple them. The children, listening intently, seemed to absorb not just the words but the wisdom they carried, while the elders exchanged glances of agreement, recognizing the moral woven through the narrative. And so, Ifia went on, the mango tree became more than just a tree. It became a symbol of resilience and unity. Under its shade, decisions were made, celebrations were held, and conflicts were resolved. It stood here, in the heart of our village, as a reminder of our connection to the past and our responsibility to the future. As her story wound down, the gentle breeze stirred the leaves above, as if the tree itself was acknowledging its role in their history. The villagers sat in reflective silence, moved by the story of Ya Asantewa and her mango tree, seeing it anew as a legacy of their shared heritage. The meeting under the mango tree slowly disbanded, but the story lingered, a narrative thread added to the vibrant tapestry of the village's collective memory. Children scampered around the tree's sturdy trunk, their laughter a music that blended with the whispers of the leaves, while the elders, with slower, more thoughtful steps, walked away, their conversations low and rich with discussion about the tales of their land. Ifia, watching her village unite under the storytelling tradition, felt a profound connection to the generations who had spoken through her, voices of the past reaching into the present, guided by the rustling whispers of the mango tree. As twilight draped its violet shroud over the village, the sky began to clear, revealing the first of the evening stars. The air was cooler now, a soft breeze caressing the earth as if to soothe it from the day's heat. The village square, usually bustling, had quieted down, save for a few children playing at the edge, their silhouettes dancing against the fading light. This serene hour, when day meets night, was when Ifia loved to weave her stories, tapping into the tranquility that enhanced the intimacy of her narratives. Tonight, she chose to tell a tale under the open sky, by the flickering light of a small fire, around which villagers gathered, drawing comfort from the flames and each other. The story I share this evening, Ifia began, her voice a gentle wave in the ocean of dusk, is about the evening star, the first star that blesses our sky at sunset. It is a tale of vigilance and protection, of a guardian that watches over the threshold between light and darkness. Her audience settled in, their faces illuminated by the firelight, attentive and expectant. Long before our village was founded, she continued, when the land was wild and untamed, the evening star was not just a beacon in the sky, but a celestial watcher tasked with guarding the earth against the nightmares that roamed the shadows. The star watched every night, its light a sentinel against the darkness. However, one night, a clever spirit of mischief known as Anansi decided to challenge the star's vigil. Anansi, with his gift of cunning, wove a web so fine and so wide that it veiled the star's light, plunging the world into unguarded night. The children gasped, their imaginations catching fire with the imagery. Ifia, noticing their engrossed expressions, embellished the drama. The creatures of the dark roamed freely, and the land was rife with whispers of chaos. The balance of night and day was threatened, and with it, the peace of all living things. But the evening star was not defeated. It called upon the winds, the rivers, and the mountains, asking for their help to break Anansi's spell. The wind blew with the strength of the mightiest storms. The rivers surged higher than ever before, and the mountains shook the earth itself. Her hands animated the struggle, mimicking the forces of nature battling the trickster's web. Finally, the web broke, and the light of the evening star pierced the darkness once again, restoring balance and order. Anansi, outwitted and overwhelmed by the unity of the elements, slunk away, his mischief foiled. As a reward for their help, and to ensure that no single force would ever veil the world in darkness again, the evening star bestowed upon the wind, the rivers, and the mountains a spark of its celestial light, granting them each a portion of its vigilance. Ifia let the story settle for a moment, the crackle of the fire punctuating her pause. And so, each night, when you see the evening star appear, remember that it is not just a star, but a guardian, aided by the elements of our world, ensuring that the night remains a time of rest and renewal, not of fear. The villagers, young and old, absorbed the tale, their eyes reflecting the firelight and the newfound appreciation for the star that twinkled above them. The story not only entertained but also imparted a sense of security, a reminder of the protective forces that watched over them, both seen and unseen. As the fire dwindled to embers and the night deepened, the gathering dispersed quietly, each person carrying with them the warmth of the fire and the protective gaze of the evening star. The village slept under the watchful presence of their celestial guardian, the story woven into the fabric of their dreams, a shared bond of peace and protection beneath the vast African sky. As the new moon rose, casting its subtle light over the village, an unusual quiet settled across the landscape, broken occasionally by the distant call of a night creature or the rustle of leaves in the gentle night breeze. In this hush, Efia planned to honor the night's stillness with a tale that reached back into the depths of time, connecting the present with the whispers of the ancient. Gathered once again under the vast canopy of the baobab tree, whose gnarled branches stretched wide as if to embrace the stories themselves, the villagers wrapped themselves in blankets against the cool air. They came not only to hear Efia's story, but to experience the communal spirit that her storytelling invoked. Tonight, Efia's voice softly broke the silence. I will tell you about the baobab's secret, a tale as old as the tree under which we sit, a story passed down through countless generations. The crowd shifted closer, the flicker of lanterns casting shadows that danced along with Efia's words. This baobab has stood as a sentinel for our village, witnessing the ebb and flow of many lives, but few know of the secret it holds within its hollow heart. Long ago, when the world was still young and the animals spoke to man, there lived a wise old elephant named Oduro. Oduro was revered among the animals for his wisdom and his memory, which held the stories of the savannah from times when the earth was new. One day, Oduro felt his time drawing near. He decided to leave a gift to the village that had always respected the creatures of the land. He approached this very baobab and whispered to it the secrets of the savannah, the stories of the rains, the droughts, the fires, and the rebirths. Efia let her gaze sweep over her listeners, ensuring each was captivated by the narrative. Oduro's whispers infused the baobab with a magic unseen but deeply felt. The tree absorbed his wisdom, its trunk swelling with the stories of the savannah. The elders of that time learned that by pressing their ears to the baobab's trunk, they could hear Oduro's voice, sharing the wisdom needed to guide the village through good times and bad. Thus, the tree became not only a source of physical nourishment, but also a bearer of spiritual sustenance. The secret of the baobab was guarded closely, shared only with those who respected the harmony of all living things. As generations passed, the direct line of those who knew how to listen to Oduro faded, but the tree never forgot its duty. Tonight, Efia concluded, lowering her voice to a near whisper, if you listen closely, you might still hear the echoes of Oduro's wisdom on the wind, as the baobab continues to watch over us, its stories mingling with the rustle of its leaves. The villagers sat in silence, enveloped by the atmosphere of mystery and reverence Efia had woven around them. Some glanced at the baobab, half expecting to catch a murmur of the tales locked within its ancient bark. As the storytelling session ended, the villagers rose slowly, their movements reverent, touched by the thought of the living library cradling their history in its wooden heart. They departed under the blanket of night, the new moon a silent witness to the deepened bond between them and the natural world, a connection rekindled through the magic of Efia's storytelling. In the quiet that followed, Efia remained seated, feeling the pulse of the countless stories that thrummed through the ground beneath her, a web of narratives that linked every heart in the village to the heart of the baobab, under which they had all gathered. As the first light of dawn streaked across the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the village stirred to life, awakened by the gentle cooing of doves and the distant roar of the river, swollen from the recent rains. It was the time of harvest, a period of both celebration and reflection, marking the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. Today, Efia planned to weave a tale that would not only reflect this seasonal shift, but also encapsulate the essence of the year's journey. In the heart of the village, where the paths crossed near the community's wellspring, people gathered, their faces bright with the anticipation of the coming feast. They brought with them the fruits of their labor, yams, maize, millet, and baskets brimming with mangoes and oranges. As they prepared for the day's festivities, Efia set up her space, a small clearing lined with stones and surrounded by marigolds. "The tale I bring you today," Efia announced as the villagers settled around her, "is called The Dawn of the Harvest. It is a story of gratitude, of cycles, and of renewal." The crowd leaned in, the children sitting cross-legged at the front, their eyes wide with curiosity. This story begins with Ayana, the spirit of the harvest, who walks the fields when the first light of dawn touches the earth. Ayana's touch ensures that the crops grow hearty and strong, her presence a blessing whispered across the land. Efia paused, allowing the image of Ayana to bloom in the minds of her audience. But one year, the village faced a great challenge. A drought had seized the land, the earth cracked and dry, the riverbeds mere whispers of their former selves. The villagers feared that the harvest would fail, that famine would follow. A collective sigh rose from the listeners, many of whom remembered such hard times. In their need, they called upon Ayana, offering her gifts of the last grains and fruits they had, pleading for her mercy and aid. The next morning, just as the sun's first rays painted the sky, Ayana appeared. Moved by the villagers' faith and their willingness to share their dwindling supplies, she walked the fields, her touch more potent than ever. Wherever she stepped, the earth healed, moisture returned, and the plants revived, their leaves unfurling like the wings of a butterfly. Children clapped in delight, their imagination caught by the magic of Ayana's revival of the land. Efia smiled and continued. By the time the harvest came, the fields were abundant, overflowing with crops. The village celebrated like never before, their hearts filled with gratitude. They realized that the harvest was not just about the crops that they gathered, but about the community and the spirit of giving that nourished them all year round. As Efia's story came to a close, the villagers nodded in understanding, their faces alight with the joy of the tale and the upcoming feast. Today, as we share in this harvest, let us remember Ayana's lessons, that gratitude and generosity sow the seeds of abundance. The day unfolded with laughter, sharing, and dancing. Food was plentiful, and the air rang with the melodies of flutes and the rhythm of drums. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the fields now stripped of their bounty, the villagers felt a renewed sense of community and hope, their spirits as full as their granaries. Efia watched the celebrations, her heart content in the knowledge that her stories had woven a deeper appreciation of their traditions and the natural cycles into the fabric of her village. As the stars appeared one by one above, she knew that her role as a storyteller was not just to entertain, but to enlighten and unify. Under the vast African sky, the village of storytellers thrived, each individual a living story, each story a thread in the tapestry of their collective history, guided by the wisdom of those who spoke through the ages, from under the shade of the baobab to the vibrant gatherings at the wellspring. The cycle of stories, like the cycle of seasons, promised renewal and growth for generations to come.